future. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Rebekah Scheinfeld, who's the Commissioner of the Chicago Department of Transportation. Even in a city that works, which is what Chicago is called, no one works harder than Rebekah, delivering not only on Loop Link and the 606 Trail, but new CTA stations, expanding bike share, bike lanes, and bus lanes in neighborhoods all across the city. She was appointed by Mayor Emanuel in 2014. Before that, she was the Chief Planning Officer at CTA, planning projects like the reconstruction of the Red Line and new rapid bus corridors. But you may have known that already. What you probably didn't know is that she is a fellow New Yorker. And she started her career as the first Deputy Commissioner for Operations and Capital Projects at the New York City Parks Department. So from green grass to green lanes, she's seen it all. Please join me in welcoming the woman who is reclaiming the streets of Chicago for the people of Chicago, Rebekah Scheinfeld.
Thank you, Jeanette, and hello, NACTO. It's wonderful to be here. We got to really get this room hyped up. It's amazing. This is the biggest Designing Cities conference to date, and we're so pleased that that's happening here in Chicago this year. It's really a remarkable opportunity to have so many like-minded people together over the next few days. And on behalf of CDOT and all of our staff, we're really looking forward to participating in it. And also on behalf, obviously, of Mayor Rahm Emanuel. It's really our honor to host the 6th Annual Designing Cities Conference. Before I go further, I do want to acknowledge all of the CDOT staff that have been working really hard over the past year along with the NACTO team to make this conference such a success. So if I could ask the CDOT team members here today to please stand for a round of applause. Just a footnote on what Jeanette said. I was actually born and raised here in Chicago, but my first job out of college was in New York with the Parks Department. And so there's a little bit of my heart still in New York, and it's wonderful to have been part of building both New York and Chicago. And, you know, living in New York, going to college on the East Coast, and different points in my lifetime, I've been asked about this deep loyalty that I have for the city of Chicago. People would make fun of it and say, "Why do you love this place so much? Isn't it really just about crappy weather and food that's going to give you a heart attack?" Well, I hope that the next few days that you have here prove otherwise. Chicago has been called the quintessential American city. Even our NACTO friends billed us this way in the conference promotions. And why is that? I would say that Chicago is the quintessential American city because it embodies the spirit of reinvention that makes cities the engines of change in our society. 150 years ago this month, 1/3 of this city burned to the ground. And I'd like to thank that cow that started the fire because it led to the first time, but certainly not the last time, that Chicago has proven itself to be a leader in reimagining the art of the possible. That fire remains in us today. We are a city of grit, determination, relentless efforts to reinvent ourselves with each generation. And for God's sake, we filled in a swamp to make our iconic lakefront downtown, and we reversed the flow of our river. So we've done a few things around here. And perhaps more relevant to each of you, we are proud to be named now the best restaurant city in America. So you have many better options than deep dish pizza and hot dogs when you're in town this week. Tomorrow you will hear from our mayor, Rahm Emanuel, who himself is relentlessness incarnate. He has applied that energy to many aspects of his leadership of the city, including our transportation infrastructure. He has a relentless devotion to building a new Chicago to ensure that we have a 21st century transportation system to match our 21st century economy. And we welcome you as a witness to this most recent reinvention of our city. We're working to provide better choices, more opportunity, and greater convenience for how people get around. I'm sure many of you flew into O'Hare or Midway and then easily hopped on the Blue Line or the Orange Line to get downtown, because I hope you all realize that you should never take a cab from O'Hare. And then once you got downtown, you walked, or maybe you divvied to the hotel. Perhaps you took Amtrak or our commuter rail system, Metra, or a regional bus to get here. We take great pride in offering choices for our residents and visitors to get around, and I hope you will experience many of these different options while you're here. And this includes, on the slide there, our new Loop Link, which operates through the heart of downtown, or also includes one of the many new or renovated CTA rail stations across the city, like the newly opened Washington Wabash elevated CTA station downtown, which is part of about $150 million worth of transit investments in our central business district to expand the capacity and reliability and efficiency of movement of people in and out of downtown that our mayor has spearheaded. And thanks to the CTA again for the Venture card that all of you have so you can explore this wonderful system. Another great way to get around is on Divvy. Now, as many of you know, Chicago is currently America's best city for bicycling, and we're really proud of that, and joining the ranks of the fastest growing cities in terms of people using bikes on a regular basis for commuting to work or school. Please do take advantage of the Divvy key fob that you have as well as part of your conference registration. Divvy is one of the most successful and recognizable bike share brands across the country, and we hope that you'll enjoy it as much as we do. We're also reimagining our urban waterways here to bring people closer to the water, both for transport and recreation. And in just a few minutes, Michelle Woods from the city is going to be here to give you more of an in-depth story on the building of the Riverwalk. So like your cities, our quintessential American city must reinvent itself to meet the demands of our changing economies and lifestyles, as we experience tremendous growth in many of our neighborhoods and in our downtown core. At tonight's opening reception, you'll be in the Randolph Fulton Market neighborhood, a transitioning area that was once a center of meat packing and wholesale distribution. And today, it's a vibrant neighborhood where companies like Google are setting up shop, and McDonald's is relocating its corporate headquarters, due in part to our investment in transit there with our new Morgan Street Green Line elevated CTA station, which provided better access to the neighborhood and gave a clear sign it was ready for redevelopment. And this is also where we're redesigning the streets to reflect these changing land uses, so we can go from this to this with our new Fulton Market streetscape. One of the amazing things about Chicago is that there is still so much opportunity for development within our city limits and even downtown. Our history as the freight capital of North America has shaped the city forever with our ubiquitous viaducts and rail lines through the heart of the city. But in many cases, those land uses are changing. We have huge swaths of former industrial land in prime locations throughout the city, minutes from downtown, along our rivers, that are now ready for redevelopment and reimagination. And we must ensure that these areas are developed in a smart, people-oriented way. In fact, here's what the area around this hotel looked like about 50 years ago. We are situated directly over what was once waterfront land dominated by railroad lines. This is now known as the Lakeshore East area. And as you experience this over the next couple days, call it what you will, a success or not, but nevertheless, it stands as a testament to the opportunity for reclaiming land for people in this city. And be sure to check out the construction just next door for the Wanda Vista Tower, which will be the city's third tallest building and what has been billed as the tallest structure in the world designed by a woman. Investment is happening all over our city, buoyed in large part by our progressive land use policies, such as our TOD ordinance that has spurred more dense residential growth along transit lines, allowing more people to live in desirable locations throughout the city without the burden of owning a car. But if we really are that quintessential American city, that also means, honestly, that we face tremendous challenges that we must address head-on if we are to remain a welcoming, accessible city for everyone. First, unlike our friends on the West Coast or in the South, we have something called winter. And the mayor has not been successful in changing this fact yet, although I think Donald Trump is doing his best. But here in Chicago, we embrace our love of the cold. Those of you from the Midwest, the North, Northeast, you understand what I'm talking about. It is a real challenge, and it's not always pleasant to be outside, but we're thinking about how we're designing our spaces so that they can remain active, vibrant public commons, even in the depths of winter. We also are facing a huge amount of our infrastructure that is past its useful life and not in a state of good repair. But we can't simply rebuild in kind. We must have the vision and foresight to redesign and build for a city of people and not make the same mistakes that were made decades ago when we built just thinking about how cars were moving around. So here's a picture showing the different levels of Wacker Drive underneath this hotel. It's a perfect example of that challenge. When you leave the hotel, please do be aware of your surroundings because you could end up on Upper Wacker Drive or Intermediate Wacker Drive or Lower Wacker Drive where the auto pound is and you don't want to be there. And that tiering works for many things, like separating deliveries from people and garbage pickup, and certain local access is improved to parking structures, but it's not really working for everyone. How are we making sure that streets like this work for everyone, for people biking, walking, our old, our young, our abled and disabled? If we're building this area out today, I don't think it would look exactly like this. And in addition to these mobility challenges for the built environment, we must also be cognizant of how our planning and transportation investments can improve or worsen many of society's most pressing injustices, disparities in health, crime, and income that far too many of us see in our cities, including here in Chicago. In this city, we are losing population in our low to middle income, predominantly minority neighborhoods on the south and west sides. And this is where the majority of our high crash corridors exist. It's just one example of the reasons why we must invest equitably to ensure that all of our residents can travel safely, affordably, and comfortably, no matter how they get around, and so that all of our residents have realistic access to opportunity, school, recreation, employment. So how do we address these challenges? Well, it takes partnerships and humility. To know that we don't have all the answers, but we have people in both the public and private sector that have the will and a long civic tradition here in Chicago to make this a better city. For example, working with our partners at the Metropolitan Planning Council, the Our Great Rivers Chicago initiative sets a vision for Chicago and a blueprint for cities around the world on how we will reimagine our urban waterways to be inviting, productive, and living. We are opening up access to our rivers throughout the city by requiring new developments to provide public amenities along the waterfront. We are building new parks and boathouses, and we are working to develop a continuous river trail from one end of the city to the other for people walking and biking. And the Mayor's Industrial Corridor Modernization Initiative is revising land use policies for continued growth and private investment in the city's industrial corridors. The recently adopted North Branch Framework Plan lays the groundwork for new transit access, public spaces, and connectivity to surrounding neighborhoods where we see changing land uses in that area. But again, we must do this equitably so that everyone benefits. Join me tomorrow morning on a panel to hear more about how we are using innovative value capture tools to ensure the city harnesses part of this economic growth in these changing areas to invest in other portions of the city where we are encouraging industrial investment. And thinking about affordability, our Divvy for Everyone program is working to remove the financial barriers to bike share by giving thousands of low-income Chicagoans access to Divvy for those without credit cards or those who cannot afford the regular annual membership. This program has become a model for cities around the country as we all work to make bicycling more equitable. And we're working with other partners across the city to reimagine vestiges of our industrial history into much-needed open space for our residents. Together with the Trust for Public Land, we turned an abandoned elevated freight rail line like this into this, the Bloomingdale Trail and 606 Park System on the northwest side of the city, an incredibly popular active transportation corridor. This is no High Line. It's very different in its own right, and I hope all of you can have a chance to experience it today and see how it knits together 4 different Chicago neighborhoods with much needed park space and a safer way to bike and run. And we're now looking at other parts of the city where we can replicate this success, reusing abandoned rail lines and infrastructure to create trails in other neighborhoods, including the Englewood Trail on the south side and the Paseo on the southwest side, so that residents throughout Chicago can experience such active transportation benefits as we've seen realized on the 606. And each time we do this, learning from our experiences to improve upon the next reimagining of such spaces. We are also investing in connections to our lakefront. On the south side, we're improving access to the lakefront for residents of that have for too long been cut off from the Lakefront Trail and the beautiful beaches and parks on our 18-mile shoreline. These improvements include the stunning new pedestrian bridge at 35th Street, and we're currently in construction on another at 41st Street. But also in the spirit of NACTO, in addition to these mega projects, we're also looking at ways to redesign our streets and reimagine our neighborhoods quickly, inexpensively, and effectively. By working with our community partners, we can see projects like the Milwaukee Avenue project in Wicker Park in Bucktown go from idea to reality in less than 4 months by using low-cost materials, in-house forces, local funding, to create better pedestrian spaces, safer accommodations for people bicycling, and optimized transit service. And we're also reclaiming space previously used by cars and making our streets fun to walk along and play on by engaging people all around the city as part of our Make Way for People programs. So as we embark on this conference, let us remember the words of Daniel Burnham, our most famous urban planner, who said, "Make no little plans." As you explore our city over the next few days, we hope you will see for yourself how we have taken that mantra to heart here and how it has helped make Chicago that quintessential American city as we work to continuously reinvent ourselves. But certainly, we know Chicago doesn't have all the answers for how to design our cities, and frankly, I don't ever want to think that we do. Each of us has much to learn from each other over the next few days as we share our diversity of experiences and experiments and successes and failures so that collectively we can all work together towards improving our transportation systems and street design to make vibrant cities. I sincerely hope you do learn something from our experiences here in Chicago. I love Chicago, and I hope that when you leave here, you will make a little space in your heart for it too. So thank you.